Hello, welcome everyone to this webinar, if you will, or video seminar, or voice over PowerPoint, whatever you like to prefer. My name is Shiva Badruswamy, and I'm sort of the product transformer at the DigitalMobileForce.com company, which is mine. So I wear multiple hats. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about how to incorporate a certain feature inside an umbrella product and how you can deal with the dependencies of the overall product strategy with a specific feature launch that has to align with that strategy. So without much further ado, let's move on to the next slide. What we're going to learn here is a bit about the umbrella product highlights that I chose, and I want to walk you through a typical way in which you can think about how to create features that align with the overall vision, strategy, and how personas would get affected. Of course, we can't just delve in the strategy and vision world. You gotta get real at some point. So we want to talk a little bit about the wireframes and designs of the feature that we want to build and see if that resonates with various stakeholders, including your engineering teams, the user interface teams, external customers, internal customers or users, and other types of partners and developers and other communities who all want to use this to better understand your product and bring in special relationships between your product and theirs through various means. We'll talk about all that as we go along. So finally, we'll talk a little bit about how an agile roadmap looks like, and I will share my thought process in relation to this feature product. Now, it's not a perfect agile roadmap. It's not extensive in that I've laid out the whole thing, but I've summarized about 3 sprints worth of activities, and we will talk about the structure of how the roadmap is put together to launch a feature within an umbrella product. So, with that said, we want to choose an umbrella product that is fairly intuitive to understand in the cloud computing world, because at DigitalMobileForce we do a whole lot of cloud computing related work, including DevOps work and architecting for various types of clouds, different use cases, workloads. Several examples of our work is available on our website as well as on my LinkedIn profile. So please free to check it out. We work on both AWS and Google Cloud platforms. And our work spans all the way from big data, containerized solutions to simpler web services-based virtual machine images. So we span the spectrum of complexity and cost of workload building. Now, the App Dynamics is a mobile performance tool that was actually recently acquired by Cisco. We're not going to talk about the entire application performance monitoring tool suite of App Dynamics, but just the mobile part of it. App Dynamics helps iOS and Android users understand certain performance features related to their apps. How quickly the apps start up, how responsive the apps are, to your commands, voice, tap, touch, shake, whatever. how well apps use their device power, which means power consumption is a big thing in edge devices. Believe it or not, transmission takes a lot more power than computing power. Therefore, that balance between those two needs to be achieved. And how efficiently apps use device memory, right? Because you don't have big memories in these mobile phones and devices, and you have to add on extra cards if you want to have higher memory or back it up to a cloud or something like that. But if you want in-memory usage, you have to have very efficient apps for very fast runs. So caching and in-memory databases become very crucial in the mobile world. So you want to monitor all this. So App Dynamics gives you tool sets where you can do real-time user monitoring. Then you can do some crash reporting where you can understand the root causes of the crashes. So you can not just address the symptoms, but go directly to the root causes and figure out how to help clean those up. Obviously, you want to have a whole bunch of user analytics. Not only that, you want to have device analytics too. So you want to know which devices are contributing to your performance issues, not just the user workloads. Finally, they give you an end-to-end snapshot all the way from the front end on your mobile device to the complete back-end servers, as well as even down to the network loads that the mobile users generate. And you can study packet losses and other things related to the networks down there. So that's the umbrella product. What we want to do is we want to build a feedback tool within this umbrella product where the users and developers and partners and the extended community can provide feedback in a very useful, meaningful way and a fun way so that they're engaged to do that, because providing feedback is not our best, use over time, and many of us don't do it, and so it has to be fun and engaging for us to provide feedback so the companies can get maximum participation. So easier said than done, right? So, but if you go about it systematically, then you're able to establish some ground rules on how to build this feature. Now, no feature can be built without some sort of a vision to start with, right? Now, everyone who wants to build this feature needs to commit to a vision. This is not the vision of the overall umbrella product, but just for this feedback collection feature. Now, why do we want to build this? That's what our vision is, basically, right? Is in the fast-moving and ephemerally loyal world of mobile applications, customers can easily abandon mobile applications for another one with one click, right? Just one click and you uninstall, or you may not even uninstall, you may just stop using it. Yet, many application vendors have not figured out a mechanism that works to sort of order of magnitude increase user loyalty. They may do some incremental work here and there, but it's not a leap of magnitude in trying to get positive user response. So what we want to do is, as a vision, we want to build a very closed-loop feedback system that responds very agilely, right, very quickly, fastly, and comprehensively for all sorts of feedback use cases, and conclusively, meaning there needs to be a finality to these complaints. Can't leave the customers hanging, right? Now you have to do all this before the users react with some sort of a negative rating of your application on a website, or write something about it on professional forums like Product Hunt, or any number of RSS feeds, because things tend to go viral these days. You want to be really super focused that you respond to the customer's complaint and close the loop before they do all of that. The other thing is, you want to reduce incidents in the first place, so you want to weave the customer's voices into the very fabric of your product design, meaning like workflow design, architecture, and so forth. you cannot think about customers' voices as the feedback as a separate kind of mechanism from your apps, or a customer's voice is like a post-app building kind of exercise. It's got to be part of your app build from day one. So you have to iterate and constantly iterate for incremental amounts of design with constant customer feedback, driving those incremental designs and rectifications and retrospectives. So that's what the whole agile framework's all about, but it's a little bit of common sense too, right? You don't want to go the whole hog and put your product right there, only to find out that the customers have a lot of issues with it. You want to do it incrementally, quickly, and iterate and learn, fail fast, and learn from that. Now, you also want the customer's acceptance of not only just features, but the feature gaps also to be positive from the first moment of usage, right? Because we're not just focused on the features. Obviously, great features will delight customers, but there would be gaps in your version 1 or beta or even in version 2s. The question is, how do you deal with those gaps in a way that you don't lose the trust and loyalty of your customers? And going back to the third point, before they react with a negative rating of the application. So commit to a vision that will help you get here, and everything else will sort of fall in place, right? Now, the important thing to understand in these launch of a feature is to see what kind of broad areas you want to write down or target or enumerate or understand before you start building this. First, you want to understand your target audience. They could be both internal or external. You see there's a number of internal audiences here, and the external audiences here. And you can see that external audiences are not just end users, but also development partners. And even your sales partners sometimes, right? So then you want to know what the problem statement is. Is it a vitamin or a painkiller, right? The vitamin is just treats your symptoms, but a painkiller is the one that really reduces your pain, the customer's pain. So you want to know what the problem statement is. It's like thousands of, what is the size of the number of people who are using your products who will effectively complain about the lack of features or any sort of functional mistakes or any sort of errors in your products, right? So thousands of opinionated users. Sales and development partners would supply feedback on all levels of product development, right? Including design elements, utility of individual features. They may not like these features, or even if the feature looks great, they may not use it, right? And new features that they would like to see in upcoming releases. Because there are different personas. Some personas like a lot of new features coming up. They're not so much bothered about with the performance of the existing features, and there are others who want the product to be perfect, and they could care less about you guys releasing a whole lot of new features. So you want to do some assumption checks, like feedback is sort of, what are you doing today? To for example, most companies is address feedback on a case-by-case basis. There's no sort of systematic gathering, storing, analyzing for patterns, and kind of coming up with solutions to ward off, like say 40-50% of the repeat complaints that they hear, so that you don't hear these complaints anymore in the future, right? Also, when companies collect data, they don't collect data in a way that is formatted for application of data science techniques, so you can derive patterns and from the data to help inform a wide variety of decisions that you need to make based on that data, right? So if you end up all your time, if you're a small startup, all your time goes to is just cleaning up data, then your capture of data needs to be looked at, because you want to make sure that data is so systematically captured in a way it lends itself to data science, so that people don't end up doing a lot of grunt work to typecast the data to lend itself to data science techniques. Now, the next thing you want to look at is the key value propositions. Now, the important thing to note about this one is that this is really not features. Still, here is generally we'll call what's the promise, right? What is the promise you're making for your internal and external customers? What do you promise, or what are you really promising to deliver your internal customer, and what are you really promising to deliver your external customers? Internal customers could be a range of customers like you see in the target audience, and everyone has like sort of different needs. So you want to address those needs, right? For leadership, for example, stock taking a megatrend bets that they made, so they want to just know, metrics that relate to whether my megatrend bets are directionally in going the right way, or I've made a really wrong bet, right? More tactical product managers want to look at adding or dropping features and how to gain users immediate gratification, right? So it's like, how do I make sure that if my app is perceived as great by the customers, they immediately go to a website and give a 4-star, 5-star rating, or write an awesome testimonial on Glassdoor or any product website or anything like that, right? Even not just about the product, but about the company, the culture of the company, anything, right? LinkedIn. How receptivity to pricing or contract term changes is one of the trickiest areas. Many startups especially don't get the pricing right, or they end up setting up unrealistic contract terms, and you'll know that very quickly from the amount of feedback you get from your customers. Also, customers are going to talk a lot about, or give you a lot of feedback about, whether the UI is good for them or not, and whether the workflows are suiting their style. Everyone's got a different style of looking at a UX and how to go about in the workflows. So you need a collection mechanism that speaks to that, right? So again, we talked about this before, the complaints resolution within promised SLAs is pretty important. So the customer service folks in your company have to resolve the complaints, close the loop with the customers within the promised SLA turnaround times. Even if they don't resolve, they should kind of mark it and say, hey, we're not able to do this, but there needs to be a finality to it, and they need to do that, right? And within a certain time agreed with the customers, so that they'll act, okay, within a day, 24 hours, I will clearly know where I stand with my complaint or feedback. Not all feedbacks have to be responded to, so you can also lay down ground rules straight up with the customers, be transparent that only certain types of feedbacks and complaints will be responded to. You also want to enhance your sort of the performance of your stack. If it's on the cloud or in-house data center or whatever be the case, all your compute storage, network performance demands, and you need data from end users, partners, developers, and others to know where exactly the root causes are for you to attack. You also want to deliver your valuable external customers, promise them a very fun, immersive experience, or so you get like an interactive experience, right? And you want to close the loop, as you said before, so that they can participate in these feedback exercises with gusto, right? And not be bored and just like click it away. It's almost like the advertisement fatigue, right? You see bad advertisement, they will just not watch it. So you want your feedback forms to mirror such, target psychologically an immersive experience. You want to have a personalized and timely response in terms of you asked, we delivered kind of stories, right? With KPI summaries being communicated in a personalized way. Maybe via emails, or if it's very big customers, one of your internal people, customer support people, calling them up and personally talking to them. In any case, it's going to be very personalized, and the response has to be timely, and you have to share some data, numbers, overall summaries about how you tackle customer feedback and complaints in a timely way. Your partners have a similar style. Your developer partners or partners also want access to your KPIs and insights and visualizations that you created out of your data, and because they are relying, because they have integrated your product with theirs, or they've integrated their product with yours, so the brands of yours and theirs are codependent, and they want to know how you're tackling your customer complaint load in a very positive and timely way, so their brands don't get affected, and vice versa. Actually, so if they do have some bad processes of tackling customer complaints, your brand could get affected. So you also want to know that, right? So. The other things you want to think about are something like, how do you build a product that is sort of 10x better than alternatives, right, available out there? So I want to think about some of the features that would contribute to that. What just makes us really superior? I wrote down some features here which I thought were, only presented 20% of the other companies' tools. So obviously you can be fully creative and come up with a very unique way of doing this. If you can do that 2-3 times, genius, like Steve Jobs, go for it. But if you can identify features that only 20% of the, or 10% of your competition uses, and find out if that's really relevant for your customers and incorporate that in your feature development process, then you're already 10x ahead of your competition, and then that's great news. Now, the competition for a feedback mechanism is the next one you want to talk about. Number 6 comes from third-party research, app marketplaces, and industry associations to do all these surveys, right? I mean, app marketplaces have their own surveys to measure all the apps of the people who host apps on their platform. There's a bunch of third-party research guys who do a lot of surveys for all sorts of apps, and mobile industry associations, an app users association, a plethora of these guys out there keep doing surveys. So why should you have your own feedback survey? So you got to answer that against the light of the competition doing, right? So to compete, you want to not only collect, but you want to close the loop with the customers because they are your customers, and you have to close the loop in a way that they really like that kind of response times, the way in which we're accountable and responsible closely, right? So you'll be timely and systematic in your collection analysis, right? So that's one of the promises you make to your customers. You're saying, okay, I'm not just going to collect, but I'm going to actually be very systematic in my analysis, that there'll be meaningful insights you can use to reduce the problems. It's not just a collection mechanism, it's actually an actionable data mechanism. Which is the third point, is we use a lot of data science tools, and we will invest in data science capabilities to understand the patterns in data and share these powerful insights with you, the customer, as well as with our partners, so all of us can make our entire product ecosystem great, right, and powerful and faultless. I mean, 5% faults, okay, whatever. But the customers and other partners have to know that you're making a conscious investment in a very systematic way to collect feedback and analyze it. It's customer acquisition strategy for this. Who do you want to go and collect feedback from? And if you want to keep your cost of acquisition very low, and obviously your app users who are using already app users, the captive users, they are the cheapest because you already acquired them, right? Then you may have a lot of marketing events. You want to piggyback on those and collect some information because there are booths in these marketing events. You can just ask whoever stops by to, write up complaints or feedback, positive, negative, whatever, neutral. You've already invested in your marketing events, so why not? Just use the forum to do this, right? You can also import some real-time data from your partners who might be collecting, in an indirect way, feedback on your app, right? Because if their app uses your app or your app uses their app, end customers don't know whose app is who, right? And they're going to just generally broadcast complaints about the whole merged app, and you can collect data from your partners, kind of parse it, and take the problems that your app has, and then work on that, right? You can also run some feedback loops at the end of every webinar, correct? I mean, you have a lot of product webinars, education webinars, demo webinars, name it. We have a lot of webinar-based interaction with our customers. So at the end of every webinar, you might want to sort of get some feedback survey about not just the webinar, but also about your product complaints, how the future releases are coming up. Do they want some future features in that, and so forth. So it's a great forum to interact. Going further, you can even form a sort of a conference board or a panel board if you're a big company of dedicated customers who can show up for these panels once a month or a quarter and give you continuous feedback in your development, right? So So it doesn't have to be just an in-app feedback. It could be other modes of feedback as well. And you can embed the feedback pages in social media, right? Top social media where your customers spend their time, called the watering holes. Of course, you got to be targeting these social media because they're sort of like expensive to host some of these things, and you want to get the maximum eyeballs. So don't go host on LinkedIn a feedback loop if your customers are not business professionals, right? So you would rather want to do that on Facebook or some other or Snapchat or Instagram if they're more of a consumer type people. So that's where you want to prefer media that supplies very specific users information that they can share with you rather than just broad aggregated average information. So the more you know about the users, the demographics, potential area they're responding from, you could correlate a lot of other things from demographic data that you can procure from other sources and see why the customers are behaving or complaining a certain way. It could be their backgrounds, it could be the culture, it could be the personas. Right? Now, you also want to have a bunch of key performance indicators to measure how your feedback is actually process is actually working. Correct. I mean, there's no reason to do any sort of feature development or product without measuring the success or failure of the product, frankly, because failures are the stepping stone to success, and you'll get there eventually. So you want to have the ratio of quality feedback to monthly active users. You always want to look at rolling trends and directional forecasts instead of point-in-time impacts, because things change over time. Your development patterns change over time. You've incorporated feedback, made your features better. So you want to make sure that you analyze things over a rolling trend. Correct. You also want to correlate the feedback comes with some big scores, like NPS scores that are at uber level, right? I mean, one NPS score for a company or a app rating, on a wherever App Store, Google Apps, or Play Store, and see how your subdivided metrics correlate with those overall movement. And you'll learn a whole lot. If your overall movement is positive, but your sub metrics are moving in a sort of a mixed or negative direction, kind of know that maybe there's a little bit of a disconnect in how users are perceiving your products. And who's actually buying it, and you're sending service to the wrong set of people, for example. Traffic like scorecards are great because they're built on scoring models and give you a quick idea of red, yellow, green on various measures, of your product's attributes, the communication mechanism, the marketing of your product, everything, right? So everything can be process based and build red, yellow, green traffic light kind of scorecards. I want to talk. Some of the KPIs can involve the complaints workflow itself, right? How do the round trip times or the closure times, closed loop time distributions look like, right? What's the average, maximum, minimum time to resolve a complaint, and is that distribution something that is acceptable for you, acceptable by the industry, or you got to tighten it up, or you're great, you're the leading 10 percentile in the industry who's doing this, that kind of stuff. Right, and also, the percent of complaints that have been resolved, by the SLAs, correct? I mean, you not just resolve complaints, you have to resolve them according to the SLAs that you promised to your customers. Say, I'm going to resolve a tier 1 complaint in 24 hours. You gotta do that 99% of the time. So you gotta monitor that, right? Also, you want to have these key performance here, the cuts. Various types of cuts, for example, features or custom types. But there's a lot of other types of cuts like you see on the slide, and all that different types of cuts will help you understand, the root cause of the problem. That's why you look at different cuts. Right? You look at an overall view first, and then look at different cuts to understand, overall view changes. Now, it's important to understand when you're developing features. Who are the personas who are affected by? You want personas that you need to address to, not affected by, but address to. There are different kinds of people out there, frankly. You can't build a product generalizing everyone, right? So you have to at least understand the the goals and pain points of someone like early adopter who's more risk taking and is itching to use the app in sort of novel ways. You might be even someone who wants to provide feedback, like you see in the picture, like on a wearable devices hanging from the top of a building, I guess, or he's trying to take a dive, I guess, from the top of a building. And guess what? Midway through the dive, he may say, "Hey, you know what? This app that I'm using to measure the altitude of my dive is something that's not great because it's for whatever reason," and he wants to provide feedback right then. So, is there a way for you to sort of like capture that feedback? Is that important for you to make sure that you understand those personas, their characteristics, and how to capture the feedback, right? They all have the psychology of such people are very different from psychologies of other people. They like more of a game based approach to when they look at UIs, right? They want to conquer one stage and then go to the next one and the next one. So it's got like an impact on the way you build the UIs from. They have very short attention spans. So you don't have a bunch of data on your feedback form. It must be pretty quick, and it's going to have a lot of tapping and some non-textual kind of non-open-ended kind of stuff. So they can just quickly do things and go off, and then do their things because they're always on the move. They are doing stuff. But the cool thing about them is that they're very influential. So whatever they do will give you the ideas for your next great feature visions. People typically tend to follow such influential people in their, in how they want to be, right? You want to be like Earl, so you're going to want to have features that Earl proposes. These Earl kind of people are going to be more forgiving on your sort of like regular performance, right? If an app crashes or hangs, he's not going to worry that much more than how many disruptive features you're actually introducing. Of course, you can't have your app crash for a whole day. That's not going to be forgiving by Earl, but you know what I mean. Now, Percy here is more of a perfectionist, just the opposite end of Earl, right? She needs flawless products rather than the disruptive type of product features, correct? I mean, her pain points are more focused on, I want the product to work today. It's got to be very functional. And it's got to be personalized to me. And if there's some little, snag or anything in the product, you better fix that, or I'm just going to somebody else. Correct. So it's the perfectionist approach. Only way to earn their trust and their loyalty and is to make sure that your app is working really well and make sure that you focus a lot on your existing features to make that 99.99% working. Right. They are not much concerned about how many new disruptive features you come out with because they want something that works really well for them. They will peel the onion layers like Percy's doing here with her magnifying glass on the floor to just spot the slightest of blemishes, and she's gonna get really annoyed if it's you're gonna clutter the app with a whole lot of things that kind of smudges or makes it not transparent, to figure out problems and issues, or it takes a lot of time for you to resolve their complaints. They're going to see the complaint resolution process also part of the whole product experience, and they want a perfect complaint resolution process. So they are very strongly opinionated people. They will believe that negative feedback, actually is what contributes to establishing accountability of companies. So you better be sort of like ready to hear very negative feedback from these folks, but they don't have some sort of ill intention towards the company. It's just that their persona means that they want you to be really perfect in all aspects of your product development, customer relationship, pricing integrity, and so forth. So with that said, this is how you kind of like think about how you want to build your feature for different personas and kind of take it from a vision to strategy and talk it out with your team. And they're all going to collaborate and give you like, okay, maybe this is not applicable to you. It's not applicable to me. Let's drop those particular pain points because our customers do not feel those. So this structure has to sort of collaboratively evolve with all sorts of stakeholders in your company, right from leadership to marketing to sales to engineering teams to DevOps to the other product managers to the product manager responsible for this feature specifically and so forth. So it's a very collaborative exercise, folks, and that's the nature of product management. You can never do anything on your own. You don't own any resources by yourself. You just have to influence others to get it done, right? So you want to have a very strong story to tell about how to influence others and get it done. And how would you sell a very strong story? It's got to be systematic. It's got to be convincing. It's got to have a flow. It's got to relate to your customers. You got to put customers first. So you got to show the personas and kind of like dive into that and make sure that understand that you're building features for personas' needs and that you really understand those customers well. That will gain credibility with your rest of your stakeholders. Now, there's a transition from there to now a little bit more about, like you saw on the agenda earlier, what we're learning here is to move more towards the design of some of these collection mechanisms. I've kind of laid out some of these designs, right? So, for example, if your primary medium of collecting feedback, most of your app is sort of like used on a larger screen iPad type stuff, it might kind of look something like this. So it could be an in-app contextual feedback, right? So while you're using the app, you can throw up a feedback. It'll really apply to persona A, like Earl, who's very busy and just wants to do an in-app feedback, doesn't want to go to other sites or other forums to look for feedback forms and send something your way. Percy will do the digging for sure. She'll go to wherever your corporate website, wherever the feedback forms, right? Look at it and fill it out, but not Earl. So you want to have in-app context for Earl, right? So, but you also don't want to annoy that person. So you want to have like opt-in screens. You want to put the you want to have the box. The interest would you be interested in a feedback box in multi languages because there are Earls all over the world. If you have usage all over the world, you have multiple language support. You also want to emphasize anonymity. Like a lot of people are very comfortable providing feedback when they can remain anonymous. The negative side of that, of course, is that the feedback could be perceived as non-credible because it's coming from an anonymous source, right? But that's a call we have to make, and but you know that since they're users of your product, and especially if you can tie with some CRM data related to how they participated in your betas in the past, you may know that they are very credible, sort of early adopters of your product, and therefore you might dispense with the need for a name or a user ID or something or emails attached with it. You also want to make sure that you have a permanent opt-out feature, right? So you want to think in the lines of some people could be like don't want to do this at all, despite being, and they want to, despite being shown the box a number of times, they might get a little bit flustered that hey, you know what, this is enough. I'm not interested in giving you guys feedback because I'm not going to use the app anymore, or whatever reasons, I'm not a feedback type person. Let others do my job, whatever, right? Or there could be others who want to procrastinate and say, hey, remind me later. No, it's not the time. I'm busy, right? So you have to provide for multiple situations like that, permanent opt-out or a delayed opt-in, remind me later, kind of situations like I've kind of laid out on the slide. It's probably pretty self-explanatory there. So now the format of the design itself. Quick time check here. I want to do this for about 45 minutes. We have about 7 minutes left, so I have a couple more slides. So we'll get there. You want to keep it. You want to keep it simple, right? in these kinds of feedback format collection screens. You don't want to have scroll bars. You see one there. I just put it there because I wanted you to draw your attention to it. You really don't want to have those scroll bars. Just one pop-up, one screen. You want to design for multiple personas, depending on who the personas of the app user basically tied to your login information or email information or some identifying information there. You want to pop up different screens for them and have the user interface speak to those different personas like we saw earlier. Some are impatient, others need to be having perfect things. It will take a lot more time to fill out your surveys. So give them maybe more questions, give them deeper questions. But people who don't want to fill out, sort of give them like very sharp, quick questions with like tabs and sliders, and where they don't have to write open information. For example, the open text capture that you see in the very bottom here, you could make it like a voice-to-text kind of API built into it. So the very busy users like Earl can just, read through, just kind of do the voice control and just kind of talk, and the text gets captured, right? So that the reason is you don't want to dispense with these open questions, because that's what gives rise to a whole lot of qualitative sentiment analysis, like pattern recognition of the words that are being used to describe your app, for example, can be like captured in sort of a sentiment analysis algorithm and displayed in a visual dashboard. So you want to keep those things there. Again, don't put any sort of dismiss or send buttons. No one wants to dismiss your feedback forms, and it's just make the whole process fun, right? Maybe, for example, you want to use the apps or the phone's inbuilt features, like you want to shake to send, or you want to tap to dismiss. So I put the X up there on the bottom top right stuff, which will close the screen. But the reason I put that is just to draw your attention to it. It's like you don't want to actually do it. So you want to do other kinds of animations to make the screen appear, disappear, transition, so forth, just like you see in PowerPoint presentations and so forth, right? I mean, you want to make it animated and fun. You want to integrate, obviously, with a lot of the digital personal assistants like Siri or Google personal assistant, Cortana, and for Microsoft, and so that you can integrate this with a voice feature or Alexa even, so that people can just give you feedback via their voice and kind of tell them, hey, it's a 4-star rating for your app, and voila, that gets captured. They tell it, and that gets captured on your app dashboard. So various ways you can make this fun, interactive. There's so many technologies out there today that you can do. You can use Twilio type APIs for callbacks. If someone writes a feedback that is really negative, you can perceive that immediately on your backend and send out another message saying, "Hey, would you like to be contacted by one of our internal folks?" And then you can set up a Twilio, pull out a Twilio API, set up a chat, or make a phone call to the person if their number's on file, or send out an email to set up some sort of calendar application within that email, so you guys can both set up mutual times to set up a date to talk further. There's APIs all over, guys. You can just integrate any and everything into it, right? So to astonish and delight customers and close the loop with them, which is part of our vision, like we saw earlier. Finally, a couple of minutes on next 2 slides. This is like a dashboard you want to build. You really want to build these visualizations based on specific personas. You can't, again, build a visualization for everyone the same way. For example, product managers in your company and the customer support CS, the tab about, are going to, PM is the product manager, CX, UX folks, LDs, leadership. They all going to want to look at different kinds of charts, right? So bring that personalization to it, and also have some customization abilities, like, for example, choosing your own benchmarks to compare against. And always start off with showing just summary level information, right? No one wants to deep dive unless they are first interested in the summary, and then if they're interested in that, they want to go there. Don't have more than 3 clicks to get to the deep dive, because our human patience runs out after 2 or 3 clicks. It's been well proven. If you can find a way to present the depth and the breadth in the same click, then there are some ways to do that. You try to do that, right? Have fun visualizations, like keyword sentiment analysis, right? That's something very visual and stands out, and people really like that. And you want to have like some sort of a calendar component for ranging out the data, because there's a whole lot of data out there that you want to see on a trend basis and not point in time, like we said earlier. So you want to let the customers customize the years or days or months over which they want to see the trend. Now mix up the charts. Don't have very uniform types of charts, right? Have some tables, even maybe not even charts. You can just have some tables in some cases. mixed up with charts and with some sentiment analysis. So the whole thing looks like you've had very interactive experience. If you're not very good at visualization, you can also just build up APIs so that the data can flow through third-party visualization tools like Tableau and others, where have geographical, um, um, uh, geographical coloring. Right, you can see like different parts. You can see like different parts of the country shown in different colors based on the data. Right, so cluster analysis can be shown on the color mode. Things like that you can do within yourself, but if you don't have the money to do that, you can extend APIs for it. So lots of things can be done, right? There's lots of tools out there. Visualization has gone to really the next level these days. Visualization can be now done through interactive experiences, through augmented reality. So maybe tomorrow someone's wearing an AR device, and they can literally like 3D walk through your charts, walk between the bars in your charts, and kind of measure their height against the height of the bar, and do some cool things with it, right? So immersive experience is what I'm talking about. So it's not just the good old way of just presenting the usual charts, but you're actually trying to make it fun, immersive, game oriented, especially for someone like Earl, and also mixing it up with very functional, perfection-oriented data for someone like Percy, right? So, finally, we come to the how you can potentially construct an agile roadmap for building out this. The show does not end just with telling how the design is going to look like and communicating, your feature, your design parameters to UX, your person in the engineering team, and writing out the specs with them, right? It's you also have to pull it all together and have some sort of a plan. My philosophy here has always been that you have to keep this whole roadmap very fluid and flexible. It cannot be a rigid roadmap promising feature deliveries on specific day, time to the second, even like a timestamp that you see these days. You can't have that, right? I mean, because today's customer satisfaction is very iterative. You don't wait until your product is perfect to release. You release something, get feedback, and then iterate and build it better. So you want to keep the release dates fairly flexible. You want to be very collaborative, right? So you want to interview these sprints in a way that you bring different stakeholders to the table at different points in time, so that it's not like a sequential way of just one team addressing a set of development capabilities after the other, but a bunch of teams coming into one sprint, another bunch of teams coming out of this sprint, and so forth. So you kind of capture that relative influence of different teams to build out your product. The question there is like, you want to make sure as a product manager that you want to get the commitment of different organizations to come to these sprints. It could be even your CEO, and who might be the lead guy on some of the product vision and the big bets. And the team should know what those mega trends and big bets are. So inviting your CEO to a sprint, to a relevant sprint, especially if there's a problem where someone's not able to correlate a feature to a master trend, needs some explanation, get your CEO on there, right? So it's a collaborative work. You want this kind of a agile process to spur a lot of debate. You want to kind of capture for example, you want to capture current world culture in terms of some sort of sprint velocity points, like which speaks to how much work can be done given the importance of a feature, right? If you prioritize the top 3 features, how many velocity points do you need to get that done? Is that something that's really good so far in your company, or do you need to make some improvements in your speed as reflected through your velocity points to meet those top 3 feature commitments, right? So your roadmap needs to speak to that. It needs to spur debate. It needs to get people ask a lot of questions that trade-off questions. Yeah, I can't build these 5 features. Hey, product manager, can you just distill it down to 3? And the product manager has to respond saying, let's do this in a systematic way where we use some sort of a trade-off dimensional analysis to figure out which 3 you guys can do. And now tell me your velocity points, and can we fit that within a regular sprint velocity, right? If your sprint total velocity points can only accommodate 100 points, and your top 3 features take about 120 points, you got a decision to make. Now you can only build 2, not 3, but that could affect customer satisfaction. So how do you make those trade-offs, right? So you have to have follow-on mechanisms. Finally, you want to have like a contextual sort of a hierarchy, so everyone knows really what the sprint delivers, from the CEO down to the tester to the engineer to everybody, right? So you want a hierarchy where you lay out the timelines in a sort of a going from epics, the big storylines, to individual user stories as the next indent, to specific tasks, which are going to be your tickets in your Jira or any platform, where the tickets are going to be the ones when they are ready to go to be built, right? When you declare the tickets as ready, they go to the engineering team for building code and testing and releasing and so forth. You also have to know really when the ticket is done, right? Not just when the ticket is ready for building, but when it's actually done. So you got to set criteria prior hand with all the engineering team, DevOps teams, and others to figure out exactly when you guys want to agree or want a consensus on when a ticket is ready and when a ticket is done. This differs from company to company culture. In our consulting engagements with a lot of different companies, we found that cultures are so different on engineering and product management teams that you got to have a consensus decisions on when a ticket is ready, when the ticket is done. How many sprint velocity points, how will you define those, and how much can be done in one sprint. All that varies from company to company, even from groups to groups within companies. So you want to lay out an initial agile sprint roadmap, and then work collaboratively to define all that, tighten it up, and make sure that you reflect your stages of your work in a way that's agreeable to almost everyone, right? So flexible timelining, we talked about that. Whether you're building a feature that's for type A type persona like the Earl, or you're building it for Percy, or for both. Creativity with who accepts performance deficiencies versus someone who doesn't want disruptive feature but really wants to focus on perfection, changes the way you do your development and testing and staging and doing your build and so forth. Someone who's very perfect, you got to do a whole lot of repeat testing and staging and exposing your app to a limited amount of traffic through some of these. If you're hosting on the cloud, for example, through load balancing techniques that expose your app to limited traffic, right? And test all that perfection. Maybe you want to have a 99.9% error-free app before you're releasing. If you want to have those kinds of customers, and especially if those kinds of Percy type customers are the ones who pay a lot for your apps, then you know where to focus on, right? Not Earls, but Percys. But if Earls are the type of customers who pay you a lot of money on our majority of your user base, then yeah, focus more on getting disruptive features out first, quickly, release it, iterate it, test it. Later, once you receive feedback from Earls. Don't try to make a perfect product first, right? So it really depends on how you go through the entire roadmap, entire strategy of defining a vision, the strategies, the value propositions, who your internal and external stakeholders are, and the personas that will get affected by a product, who forms the majority of your install base in terms of personas, who pays more, and your development process, your product management process, all depends on that body of work that you initially do to set yourself up, to set the context up for building it out. Once you do that, you will find that writing tickets, getting them to ready and done stages become really easy. If you kind of don't do the initial legwork of defining a vision, strategy, identifying internal and external stakeholders, identifying potential problem statement that you're trying to solve, the value proposition that you bring to the table, it's going to be, the product manager will be forced to think about all that during so-called the runtime. That is when you're writing out tickets, right? And at that time, so many people have already moved beyond the process that you have to actually go back and connect with those people to explain what your product's really going to try and do. So it's kind of not a very efficient approach. So keep everyone involved from stage one in a very systematic way and bring that all together via a roadmap at the very end, and have that drive that consensus. So everybody can be on board, and if there are issues that are propping up, you know where to go and how to solve it, and how to adjust your roadmap for exigencies and contingencies, and you can think about whether you can not release a feature because most of your user base is Percy and not Earl, so she's only looking for perfection, not additional features. You can delay that, right? So that's how you kind of like bring the whole story together and kind of satisfy your customers. I've kind of used this approach in part of DigitalMobileForce with a lot of companies as consulting basis. We go in there, we help them understand this whole process. The product management process is pretty involved, but it involves a lot of different stakeholders. So unless you have a very systematic way of tackling different stakeholders and recording things and putting your requirements out in very specific agreed upon consensus details, understanding the capacity of your engineering team to deliver, making those trade-offs based on a data-driven analysis using sort of dimensional analysis. Like on one dimension you may have the benefit that the product brings, on the other dimension you may have the complexity of the product or the cost to build a product, and you can map all your tasks against that, tickets against that, and see which ones you can prioritize. Right? That's a mechanism everyone can agree on. So if you don't have a very systematic way of doing that with a lot of tools, you're probably not going to bring everyone on board from day one. You're also not probably going to establish how to really solve any sort of unexpected, unknown unknowns, right? Quoting former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld's words, to solve your problem. So that's the gist of what I want to convey in this presentation. It's about a 60 minutes worth of presentation is what I want to do. So we're about 3 minutes, 2 minutes left, so I think I'm over than time. But I hope this is really useful for you guys as you kind of like lay it out for your leadership, or for your external partners or your developers or anybody else, as to what to look for when building features, and taking everyone along with you. Good luck to your whole development and product management process, and making those major bets. You should continue to take major bets, make risky bets. Try to be the world beater in your products, but do it in a way that you know what you're getting yourself into and how to manage the fallouts if anything wrong were to happen. How to adjust your roadmaps, how to pivot quickly. You just cannot pivot in your mind. That pivoting should be recorded in a roadmap somewhere, right? So again, this is Shiva Badruswamy. I'm the owner of DigitalMobileForce.com, DIGITAL mobileforce.com. Look us up. You can also write to me at sbadrus, SBADRUS, at DigitalMobileForce.com, and we'll be happy to do come solve your problems. We do a lot of DevOps work to help set up your environment. We do a lot of product management work to help streamline your expectations. So startups, if you need our help, write to us. One will be there, and we'll get your product up and running. Thanks a lot, and Godspeed. Go get that acquisition done. Go to retain your customers, make money, keep your investors happy. Bye.